You know, right now, inside of you, there's an incredible story unfolding. It's a story about an ancient invasion, a partnership that changed the course of life on Earth, and these tiny, tiny powerhouses that literally make you, well, you. So let me just start with a kind of wild question. What if I told you that you're not entirely you? That inside almost every single one of your cells, there's an ancient organism living out its life. An organism that billions of years ago was completely separate.
And no, this isn't science fiction, I promise. This little guest has its very own set of genes, its own circular piece of DNA, completely independent from the main blueprint in your cell's nucleus. It's actually the direct descendant of a free-living bacterium. And this tiny foreigner? It's the secret to all complex life.
To really get how this happened, we've got to go way, way back. I mean, let's rewind the clock 2 billion years to a time when life on our planet was facing a massive energy crisis, one that almost stopped evolution in its tracks.
Back then, life was pretty simple. Just single-celled organisms floating around. They were surviving, sure, but they were incredibly inefficient. They were basically stuck in first gear, evolutionarily speaking, because they just couldn't generate enough power to build bigger, more complicated things.
Think about it like this. These early cells were just squeezing a tiny bit of energy out of their food. It was enough to get by, but not enough to dream big. It definitely wasn't enough to build something as complex as a tree, or a mushroom, or, us. For life to take that next giant leap, it needed a completely new power source.
And that new power source didn't come from some new invention. Nope, it came from an invasion. Or, depending on how you look at it, maybe it was an invitation. Either way, this was the moment that changed absolutely everything. So, this is the heart of what's called the endosymbiotic theory. The idea is that a bigger, primitive cell swallowed a smaller, much more energy-efficient bacterium. But here's the twist. Instead of digesting it for lunch, the host cell just kept it.
You can kind of picture it in 3 acts. First, the approach. A larger host cell gets close to this special little bacterium. Then, the engulfment. It wraps around and pulls it inside. And finally, the most critical step of all, symbiosis. 2 organisms, once separate, starting a new life together as one.
So this wasn't a hostile takeover. It was a deal, and it was the best deal in the history of life. The little bacterium got a safe place to live with a steady supply of food, and in return, the host cell got an absolute superpower, the ability to use oxygen to generate massive amounts of energy.
And when you put this great partnership on a timeline of life, you really see how huge this was. Look, it happens before the first multicellular life shows up. Without this one event, the evolutionary road that led to plants, animals, and us would have just been a dead end. It's that important.
Okay, so that's the origin story, the history lesson. But what is this ancient partner actually doing inside our cells, right now, today? Well, let's take a peek inside the famous powerhouse of the cell.
Meet the mitochondrion. Its whole job is to take the fuel from our food, sugars, fats, you name it, and turn it into the cell's energy currency. It's a molecule called ATP. Literally every single thing you do, every thought you have, every muscle you move, it's all powered by the ATP cranked out by these little guys.
Its design is just brilliant. It's got a smooth outer membrane and then a super-folded inner membrane. And those folds, called cristae, are the real secret sauce. They act like fins on a radiator, creating a massive surface area. This lets the cell pack in an insane amount of energy-making machinery into this tiny, tiny space.
So what's the payoff for all this complexity? Well, without mitochondria, a cell gets about 2 little units of ATP from 1 molecule of sugar. But with mitochondria, from that same single molecule of sugar, it can generate around 32 units of ATP. That's not just an improvement, that is a complete game changer.
Now remember that separate DNA we mentioned? Well, here it is. The mitochondrial genome is ridiculously small, just 37 genes. Over the last couple billion years, it's offloaded most of its original genes to the main nucleus, but it's held on to these essential few.
And this mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA, is totally different from our main nuclear DNA. For one, it's circular, like a bacterium's, not in long strands. And it has just a handful of genes compared to the 20,000 plus in our nucleus. But the most amazing difference? It's how you get it.
Your mitochondrial DNA comes exclusively from your mother. That's because it's carried in the egg cell. This means your mtDNA is a direct, unbroken genetic line connecting you to your mother and her mother and her mother's mother, stretching back thousands and thousands of generations. It's a living piece of your maternal history.
So this 2-billion-year-old partnership is the very foundation of who we are. But it's a delicate balance. What happens when these crucial powerhouses start to break down?
Well, because mitochondria are all about energy, when they fail, it hits our most energy-hungry tissues the hardest, like our brains and our muscles. For example, in Parkinson's disease, the death of certain brain cells is tied directly to their mitochondria failing. And really, beyond specific diseases, a lot of scientists now believe that the slow, gradual decline of our mitochondria is one of the main reasons we age.
And that kind of leaves us with this final big thought. We think of ourselves as individuals, but we're really walking, talking ecosystems, powered by an ancient alliance. Our very existence, our complexity, it's all built on this incredible act of symbiosis. And maybe, just maybe, our future health depends on how well we can uphold our end of this 2-billion-year-old bargain.